His hands were shaking, not from the cold of the office air conditioning, but from something much heavier. Rahul, a senior software engineer I have known for almost 7 years, slid his phone across the cafe table in Business Bay and asked me to just look. Just look at the number. The digital salary slip glowed back at me. 24,000 dirhams credited that morning. On paper, this is the dream. This is the number that Indian parents brag about at weddings in Mumbai. This is the number that makes a young engineer in Pune quit his job and book a one-way ticket to Dubai. And yet, sitting across from me, this 38-year-old father of 2 was quietly crying into his karak chai because he had just booked his wife and both his children on a flight back to India. Permanently. He told me something I cannot get out of my head. He said, "I earn 4 times what my cousin earns in Bangalore, but my cousin sleeps better than I do," and in that single sentence, I realized this video had to be made. Because what is happening to Rahul is not a personal failure. It is not bad budgeting. It is not too many weekend brunches at JBR. What is happening to Rahul is happening to you, to me, to every single middle-class household watching this right now, from Muscat to Manama, to Mumbai to Minneapolis. And the worst part is, almost nobody is willing to say it out loud. So, today, I am going to walk you through his actual salary slip, line by line, and I am going to show you why the math of being middle class in 2026 is fundamentally, structurally, mathematically broken. Let me show you what destroyed him. His basic salary, 14,000 dirhams. Housing allowance, 7,000. Transport, 1,500. Other allowances, 1,500. Total, 24,000 dirhams per month. Beautiful, right? Now watch what reality does to that number. His rent for a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Al Nahda jumped from 72,000 dirhams a year to 110,000 dirhams a year at renewal. That is a 38,000 dirham increase in 12 months. His youngest daughter's school fees at a mid-tier Indian curriculum school, 28,000 dirhams annually. His older son, 36,000. Mandatory health insurance for the family, 11,000. Salik tolls, parking, fuel, Dewa bills that quietly doubled in summer. Grocery runs at Carrefour where a small trolley now crosses 400 dirhams without blinking. By the time Rahul sends anything home to his aging parents in Mumbai, he is saving less than 1,000 dirhams a month. 1,000. On a 24,000 dirham salary. And here is the question I want you to sit with before we go deeper. Are you actually saving more than 5% of your salary right now? Be honest with yourself. Because if you are not, what I am about to tell you next will explain exactly why. Now here is where most financial channels get it completely wrong. They will tell you Rahul needs a budgeting app. They will tell you to cut the lattes. They will lecture him about lifestyle inflation. But Rahul does not have a spending problem. Rahul has a geography problem. And to understand it, you need to look at a map, not a spreadsheet. Every single thing in Rahul's kitchen, every appliance in his apartment, every litre of cooking oil, every kilo of basmati rice imported from Punjab, every Korean television, every Chinese smartphone, almost all of it passed through one of 2 narrow stretches of water before reaching his home. The Strait of Hormuz and the approaches to Jebel Ali port. The Strait of Hormuz is barely 21 nautical miles wide at its tightest point. And right now, in this current geopolitical climate, war risk insurance premiums on vessels transiting that strait have surged to levels we have not seen in a generation. Shipping insurance, which used to cost 0.07% of cargo value, has spiked in some categories to nearly 1 full percent. That sounds small until you remember that it compounds on every container, every pallet, every single tin of tomato paste sitting on the shelf at Lulu hypermarket. Then add the emergency surcharges. Carriers like Maersk, CMA CGM, and Hapag-Lloyd have layered on what they politely call transit disruption surcharges, some as high as $2,700 per 40-foot container into Jebel Ali. That cost does not vanish. It does not get absorbed by the shipping line out of generosity. It gets passed to the importer, who passes it to the distributor, who passes it to the retailer, who passes it to Rahul when he buys diapers for his daughter. This is what economists call imported inflation, but I want you to call it something more honest. Call it a hidden tax on middle-class survival. A tax Rahul never voted for, never signed up for, and cannot opt out of. Meanwhile, his corporate salary, set by an HR department in some Singapore or London headquarters, has been frozen for 2 years running. His cost of living went up by an estimated 19% over 24 months. His salary went up by 0. You do not need a PhD in economics to understand what that gap does to a family. It eats them alive, quietly, month by month, until one day the wife is packing suitcases and the husband is crying into his tea. Now I want to do something that will probably make some people uncomfortable. I want to compare the United Arab Emirates directly with Singapore. Because on the surface, these two economies look like twins separated at birth. Both are small. Both are hyper-strategic. Both sit next to a maritime choke point. The UAE next to Hormuz, Singapore next to the Strait of Malacca. Both run on foreign talent. Both market themselves as glittering, tax-free, opportunity-rich playgrounds for the global middle class. But when you actually peel back the institutional layers, you find two completely different machines underneath. In Singapore, when you earn a salary, a portion goes into something called the Central Provident Fund. It is mandatory. It is yours. It compounds. It pays for your housing, your medical bills, eventually your retirement. The state forces you to save, and in return, it shields you from the worst of inflation through subsidised public housing, where roughly 80% of Singaporeans live. Healthcare is structured. Education in public institutions is heavily subsidised. The system is far from perfect, but the institutional architecture is designed to protect the worker from the volatility of the global market. Now look at the Gulf model. There is no mandatory savings vehicle for expatriates. Your end-of-service gratuity, calculated at roughly 21 days of basic salary per year for the first 5 years, is often inadequate and sometimes delayed. Housing is fully exposed to private landlords who can, and do, raise rents by 30 to 40% at renewal in hot markets. Schooling for expatriate children is almost entirely private, with top-tier schools charging upwards of 90,000 dirhams per child per year. Health insurance is mandatory, but the quality tier you can actually use depends entirely on what your employer pays for. And then come the consumption taxes nobody talks about. The 5% value-added tax on almost everything, the municipality housing fee tacked onto your electricity bill at 5% of your annual rent, the Salik road tolls, the parking fees, the Dewa security deposits, the Ajari registration fees. Add it all up, and that famous tax-free salary you were promised in your offer letter has effectively been clawed back by something economists call opaque consumption taxation. You are taxed. You just are not told you are being taxed. Singapore taxes you transparently and gives you institutional protection in return. The Gulf taxes you invisibly and tells you that you are tax-free. Which one would you rather have? Take a second and actually answer that in the comments below, because I read every single one. If this breakdown is opening your eyes to what is actually happening to your wallet, do me one small favour. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment with the city you are watching from, and share this video with one friend who is also feeling the squeeze. This channel runs on no corporate sponsorships and no hidden agenda. It runs purely on independent viewers like you who want the truth without the sugarcoating. That is it. Now let us get back into it, because this next section is going to hit very close to home depending on where you are sitting. Here is audience question 1, and I want you to actually pause and think about this. How many hours did you work last month, and how much of that work actually converted into real savings sitting in your bank account at the end of the month? Not consumed, not spent on bills, actually saved. If the ratio horrifies you, you are not alone. You are the new global majority. Now let me take you on a rapid tour of the 4 geographies that matter most to this channel, because the Rahul effect does not stop at the Dubai border. It is radiating outward, and it is hitting each of you differently. starting with Oman, where more than half of you are watching from right now. Oman has been quietly absorbing massive logistical pressure as shippers reroute cargo through Muscat and especially through Sohar port to bypass Hormuz-related risk premiums. On paper, this sounds like a win for Oman. More cargo, more port revenue, more jobs. But what is actually happening at the kitchen table in Al Quwayr, in Rui, in Salalah, is much messier. Domestic infrastructure was not built for this rerouted volume. Trucking costs inside the Sultanate are climbing. Warehouse rents in industrial zones near Sohar have jumped. And that pressure trickles into the price of literally everything you put in your shopping cart at Lulu or Sultan Centre. Your rial still looks strong against the dollar, but the basket of goods that Real buys you is shrinking month by month, and most Omani middle-class families I speak to feel it, but cannot name it. Now you can name it. Bahrain, you are next, and you are facing something even sneakier. Bahrain's private sector wages have remained remarkably insulated, which sounds wonderful until you realize insulated is a polite economist's word for stagnant. Meanwhile, because the kingdom relies heavily on air-freighted staples and imported processed goods routed through Saudi Arabia and the UAE, every disruption upstream becomes a price hike at your local cold store in Adliya or Riffa. The Bahraini middle-class family is being squeezed from both ends, wages that refuse to move, and a grocery bill that refuses to sit still. India, my friends watching from Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Kochi. Your situation is structurally the most dangerous of all. India imports nearly 60% of its crude oil. When tensions rise around Hormuz, your domestic fuel prices feel it within weeks. Petrol, diesel, transport, every chapati you eat, every Ola ride you book. But the deeper wound is the remittance corridor. The Gulf sends home over $40 billion in remittances to India every single year. That money pays for your cousin's wedding in Kerala, your nephew's engineering college in Hyderabad, your grandmother's diabetes medication in Lucknow. When Rahul's wife flies back to Mumbai because Dubai broke their family budget, that remittance pipeline thins out. Multiply Rahul by a few 100,000 families, and you are looking at a structural shock to India's domestic consumption story that nobody on financial television wants to discuss openly. And to my American viewers, especially the ones from Texas, California, and the tri-state area, I see you in the comments and I want to speak to you directly. For decades, the United States expat or investor sitting in Manhattan could comfort themselves with the idea that geographic distance was a shield, that what happens in the Gulf stays in the Gulf, that your dollar would always be the safest asset in the world. That comfort is now expired. In an era of global fragmentation, of de-dollarization conversations in BRICS summits, of capital flight not toward Wall Street, but towards Singapore, Dubai gold vaults and Swiss francs, your purchasing power as an American middle-class household is being slowly hollowed out by inflation that was, in part, manufactured by choke points you have never heard of. The world is now one interconnected nervous system, and when Hormuz twitches, your grocery bill in Houston feels it within 90 days. So let me tell you what this all actually means, because the numbers and the maps are only half the story. The other half is the human cost, and it is staggering. What we are witnessing in real time is the death of middle-class aspirational mobility. For 70 years, the unspoken promise to the global middle class was simple: work hard, move where the jobs are, sacrifice some years away from home, build savings, educate your children, retire with dignity. That contract is now mathematically broken. Rahul did everything right. He studied engineering at a good Indian institute. He grinded 12-hour days at Infosys. He took the leap to Dubai. He learned to navigate 3 cultures. He sent money home every month for 9 years. And after all of that, in 2026, he cannot afford to keep his own family in the same country as him. Read that sentence again. He cannot afford to keep his own family in the same country as him. The psychological toll of this is something we do not talk about enough. There is a specific kind of grief that hits expatriate professionals at around 3 in the morning when they cannot sleep, the realization that the original deal they signed up for no longer exists. They are still paying the cost of being away from home. Missed birthdays, missed funerals, missed first steps. But they are no longer receiving the financial upside that was supposed to make those sacrifices worth it. They are paying full price for an experience that is no longer being delivered. And when that realization hits, it does not produce anger. It produces a quiet, hollow exhaustion. The kind I saw in Rahul's eyes across that table. Multiply Rahul by 10 million expatriate professionals across the Gulf, across Singapore, across London, across Toronto, and you are looking at the largest, quietest middle-class crisis of our generation. Not a crash, not a recession, something worse. A slow, structural erosion of the dream itself. So here are the 2 questions I want you to leave in the comments before you click away, because I genuinely read them and they shape what I make next. Question 2. If your salary stayed exactly where it is today for the next 5 years, but inflation kept moving at its current pace, at what point would you be forced to make the same decision Rahul made and send your family back home? Be brutally honest with yourself. 6 months? 2 years? Never. Question 3. Do you believe the Gulf model can survive another decade without introducing Singapore-style worker protections, mandatory savings vehicles, and rent caps? Or are we watching the slow expiration of the expat dream in real time? Drop your answers below. Argue with strangers in the comments. Tag the friend who needs to hear this. Because the conversation is the only thing keeping this kind of independent analysis alive. And if you are sitting there right now wondering how Singapore actually built the institutional shield that protects its workers, how a tiny island with no natural resources, sitting on top of the Malacca choke point, engineered a system that makes its middle class structurally more resilient than almost any other on Earth. That exact breakdown is already live on this channel, and it is the natural next chapter of the story you just heard. Rahul's Dubai slip showed you what a broken contract looks like. The next video shows you what a working one looks like. The clip is loading on your screen right now. Tap it. Let us keep going.